Hey friends, I this is sort of the fifth lesson in my little Sibilla series, and I realized I didn't sort of do something I said I would in one of the videos, which was demo the Council of 13 again. But I also, just wanted to talk a little bit about spreads that I use. And I honestly really don't use that many. I am such a lover of the two sort of ones that I'm addicted to. But I'm going to show you my forecast spread, which I actually did a video on, I think, and how I'm adjusting it. Because I've done a few examples of it, and I haven't really, I think the people I read for were okay with the outcome. I just felt like the spread wasn't as practical as I like it to be. So, but it was one I created, and so I think when we create spreads, we generally need to work on and refine them anyway. So one thing I'll do in a lot of cases is the 9 card, which to me is like the number one all-purpose spread for me. I think it's sort of perfect, and I have done examples of this in the readings and the other videos, and I sort of look at the center card to give me the overall theme, and then I look at the remaining cards and explore them in context with each other in rows and columns, and that gives me the overall message. And so I sort of try to detect the theme and then have the other cards tell me more about that theme. So I've got lightness and marriage reversed here as my central theme. So it may suggest I'm dealing with a reading for somebody whose ego is preventing them from making any commitments. And then I start to interpret the rows and columns. I love questions, especially for these kinds of decks. But any kind, that if you watch my videos at all, you know what a lover of questions I am, because I just feel like they give us a boundary. If anything's possible, then anything's possible, which makes it harder to narrow down. But with a general reading, doing this way, I get the idea of like, how is your ego getting in the way of making commitments or making lasting commitments? It's not necessarily a relationship. I feel like the rest of the cards would tell me that. But again, I have to do less guesswork if someone tells me, oh, this is about my job. Right. So then I wonder, okay, how is your ego preventing you from committing to the work that you're doing? And suddenly I have an interesting journey to take that's a little easier for me because I have a bounding box to play with. So I know that I'm looking specifically at work. And again, as I say in Tarot on Earth a lot, the cards dealt, the cards drawn always answer the question that we asked. When there is no question, it's a little bit harder to detect what's up. That's my thought anyway. So, again, so I feel like the 9 card spread is really nice, general or not. As a general spread, I find it helpful because it helps me, reading the way that I read, pinpoint the idea of ego getting in the way of commitments. And so now, again, just to give you an example, if this is about work, so you're having a hard time committing to work, to the work that you do, why and how I can explore in the rest of the reading. So I've got in my top row, marriage reversed, doctor, and gifts. So it could suggest. Now, what I've also find, and I want to say this too, is my early interpretations, like the first row, for example, each additional row gives me more information, gives me more context. So what I'll often find is that my impression of the first row or the first column, depending on where I'm starting, not necessarily the first pair, because the first pair tells me the theme, but I don't know more about the world yet. So I'm still sort of feeling my way through. So when I'm looking at the first column, generally, I have less context than once I get to the third column, which is the last thing I do, right? Because I go boom, 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 boom. So by the time I get here, I often, I know what I'm talking about. When I get here, I'm not necessarily sure. So I'll start to feel things out and get a sense of the world. So there's a lack of commitment, there's a disconnect, and then I have doctor and gifts. So I wonder out of the gate if there is like the disconnect, the lack of connection comes from the expectation that someone will do the work for you, that someone will attend to you, and give you, you know what I mean? So you're being healed, attended to, gift. So you sort of deserve the gift of someone doing this for you. And that's why you're not committed to it. But again, it's a little shaky. It's not a traditional way that I would interpret the Doctor right now. So I, in an ideal situation, I'll say, okay, here's what I sort of see so far. As I get further, I'm gonna explore more. But I already know that ego is an issue because of this card reversed, the haughtiness reversed. Oh, that's not hardiness, is it? That's lightness. See, this is why you need to pay attention. Um, and things like that will happen. And sometimes I just trust it. You know what I mean? But, and here's an example of being on the lookout for what you're doing. So now, again, and being careful. I like when I put mistakes on video just because I feel like it reminds me and everyone else that I am not, perfect, and I need to be reminded of that frequently. So in this case, I would say that they're not committing because they don't take things seriously. So there's a lack of connection, a lack of commitment because it's not, they don't take things seriously. So they have a very like laissez-faire attitude or blasé attitude about what they're doing. So they're not committing because they don't take things seriously. So now that changes the content. And this is actually an interesting way, right? Because if this had been haughtiness, that would have been a different story, but it's lightness, right? So now I look at this, and this combo creates a really different meaning. So the lack of commitment now still is connected to Doctor and Gift of Precious Stones. But it seems like there's actually, some gift to be found, some benefit to actually taking things more seriously, to having a more, severe, scientific attitude. You know what I mean? Their seriousness, the Doctor, could be a gift. So they may be avoiding commitment because they don't take things seriously, but there may actually be, I think about the Doctor examining, right? So that makes me think of seriousness, of, preventative medicine. That could be a gift. So there may actually be something they do need to take seriously. So you can see how that changed the context because I screwed up the card I was looking at here. So again, I'm still not sure, but now when I come to the next row, I've got the young woman, and I've got lightness, and I've got the man of letters. So I have another sort of serious man, a sort of another thoughtful human, and I have the young woman. And again, when I interpret that card and it's not a person, which it frequently isn't, to me that suggests adolescence. Reversed, it suggests immaturity. So they're not taking things seriously. They're being frivolous about it, and in fact, it's due to an immaturity. This sort of links me up back here with the seriousness of the Doctor. This is the man of letters. Again, they should learn what it is that the consequences of what they're not looking at. So I get a little deeper here, and then I look at the bottom row, and I have melancholy, messenger, and the widow reversed. So they're really feeling sort of gross. So even though they don't take things seriously, they're actually not feeling as good as they could. And the message is clear that they're actually going to lose out in a bad way if they don't wisen up. If they don't learn, if they don't get smart. You know what I mean? So now I have a clearer understanding of what it is I'm talking about because each row gave me more clarity. So I wasn't super sure here. I was a little more sure here. I was questioning my interpretation of this as learning, but then as I got to this, it actually made sense. So, the message is if you don't you don't feel good anyway, the message is you're going to lose out in a bad way if you don't wise up. So now I'll look at the columns, and I'm going to keep sort of exploring whether or not that's still true. So their lack of commitment, their immature lack of commitment, and their depression, their melancholy, is due to their immaturity. So like they, again, that confirms my initial thought. We already know the combination of doctor. The doctor likely, this and this is telling me this combination here is that there may be someone in their life who the man of letters and the doctor, like, they're telling me that there may be someone who's giving them the message, so they may know. They may have someone who's told them this. You've gotten the message. You've got to sort of take things seriously. This wisdom is a gift that could stop you losing out, or stop making the loss so bad. But if you don't, you're gonna lose. So if you don't accept this gift of wisdom, if you keep taking things not so seriously, again, the widower reversed is a loss in a bad way. So, and again, if this were a relationship question, it would be different than if this were a health question. Again, I don't read for health, so I think that it's important to note that. But if you do, this would definitely be a clear warning that you probably want to get something checked. Something you think isn't serious is. But in a relationship or a job, if this were a job context, you're not taking your work seriously enough. Someone is mentoring you, is telling you that you should, and if you don't, you're going to lose your job. Likewise, a relationship. If you don't listen to the sage advice, then you'll probably lose out on the relationship and end up alone. And again, for me, for some reason, these Sibilla readings always seem to do a good job of saying, here's something you should be looking out for because you're going to get doinked if you don't. And that may just be my style of reading again, but it seems to be pretty common for me. So the 9 card to me is the most useful. I think it's really versatile, and I use it for just about everything, and for just about every system I work with, which, again, right now primarily is Tarot and Sibilla. My version of Sibilla, anyway. The next spread that I adore is the Council of 13. The really only downside of this is its size. It's so big that it's hard to fit in the frame of my camera, which is my phone. And, I think my phone does a decent job of taking videos, but, fitting 13 cards in this pattern is really difficult to do, especially on the height of my desk. So I'm going to do my best to, and I'm not even laying out the way you would lay it out. I'm just sort of doing it to make sure I can get it to fit. But basically it would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, I screwed that up. Let me actually do it the right way. I'm making all kinds of mistakes today, you guys. This has been one of those months. For some reason, January, I have oddly not felt my most brilliant. So let me just shuffle this again. Again, I think this kind of is an expansion in a way. You read it a little bit differently. But it's essentially an expansion of the 9 card. It just shows more. Essentially, it allows you more opportunities to check yourself before you wreck yourself, so to speak. But again, I don't do it a whole lot, primarily because it's just hard to fit in the viewfinder. So essentially it's the 9 card square with 4 additional cards. Can you see? You can't. This is like the hardest. I'm going to take my camera off, so pardon the shakiness for a second on the messy desk. All right, so you get here, this is the outline, this is the shape. And if I were to bring it way up, you'd see it. Right, so if I had a taller tripod, this would be a little bit easier to deal with. But I'll just give you an example, and if I need to, I'll move the camera as I go along. The way that you read this is essentially your middle card gives you the theme. And that's what I do in tarot. With Sibilla, I tend to look at the middle 3. which you're going to do eventually anyway. In tarot, I feel like I have enough information for the most part from one card that I can start that way. Sibylla, I have sort of an unhappy home essentially. You know what I mean? That doesn't seem like that's enough for me, so I'll look at the combination of three, and this is really read in combinations of three, essentially the way you laid them out, but the middle card is always card one. So I start with the middle three, so 1, 2, 3, and that gives me my theme, and then I read 1, 2, 3, or really this should be like 1, 4, 5, right? And then I read 1, 6, 7, and 1, 8, 9, and one, and the cross. So but one is always the middle card of the spread. So I have an interesting combo here. I've sort of like the sickness card reversed and the house card reversed, and then love. So I would say that they're actually sort of really enjoying something that is not good for them. You know what I mean? There's something at home that's actually hurting them, but they're really enjoying it for some reason, or they think they are. And the rest of the reading will kind of tell me what it is and why. So now I read this combo, which is, again, I'm going to take this off the tripod and make this just a little easier for you. Pardon the shakiness. So this combo is money, house, and death. So this, an interesting sort of visual cue is the way that the money is sort of pouring into the death card right through the house. So it's like this is probably a money sink. It's actually the house, which they love, is actually bad for them because it's eating up all their money. You know what I mean? It's taking all their money and sort of ending their financial security. So that cross kind of gives me a really clear message. Now I'm going to look at the combination of house, size reversed, and gift reversed. So what I would say here in this combo, again, they may feel like they missed their opportunity to get out of it, you know what I mean, to fix what was there. So their love affair with the house, it may actually be partly because, they feel like they've lost the opportunity to sort of sell it for something better. That's one thing. Now, I'll be honest, like I'm not in love with that interpretation, so I may come back to it later to revalidate. And I'm drawn by the way that this love card is sort of pointing so much to this, which suggests to me, I wonder whether they actually missed the opportunity on purpose because they really loved the house. And even though they thought it was going to be a gift, it's actually really like turned into a white elephant. You know what I mean? They thought it was going to be something. They longed for it. They sighed for it, but it actually turned out to be not a great thing. So now I read the combo of the top and then the middle and the bottom. So I've got the old woman reversed and the house reversed, and then consoling surprise reversed. So the old woman to me is generally all about like wisdom. So this sort of seems like they thought it was a wise decision to buy the house, and it turned out to be like a pretty not wise decision. And the sort of joyful surprise they expected of it turned out not to be, good. It was not a consoling surprise. It was maybe, a not very happy surprise. So now I read the cross here, the diagonal. So I have the merchant, the house reversed, and the grand seigneur. It may make me wonder if there had been pressure to purchase the house. Probably a salesperson really gave them a hard sell. And in fact, when I look at, the merchant, I often think of as sales. The grand seigneur, the lord, is sort of someone who's in charge. Someone could have pushed them into it, but I sort of feel like the salesperson made a hard sell. And they made the commitment. So here's an interesting thing, right? I've got the wife, which I normally interpret as a partner, and we've got the commitment, the wife. So in a relationship, it would sort of be like you're committed to someone who isn't your wife potentially, but in this case, it's like I think you married someone you weren't ready to, that wasn't your partner. You know what I mean? So again, the house being this thing is like you committed to someone who's not your partner, or something that's not your partner, again because it's the house. So the house wasn't yours and you committed to it. So now, you know what I mean? Another thing that Camellia Elias does in the book is she said, you can read different combos. You can read like the bookmarks, in this case, the merchant, size, and wife. That doesn't tell me a whole lot. The merchant probably played on their longing in a bad way because the longing card is reversed. Again, to get something that wasn't their part, that wasn't theirs, they shouldn't have been committed to. They connected to a gift they felt a lot of pressure to do. You can look for directionality in the reading. I don't find that. I think that works a little bit more in like Kipper cards, but here, like, that's a pretty strong connection, and it's like you really loved this thing, you really wanted it, and you sort of knew it wasn't right. The Lord is looking at death and the partner, the wife. So the like salesperson probably knew it wasn't right for them, but pushed them anyway. So it may not have been like the most brilliant seller. You could sort of look at the 9 card spread like in the middle. So what is like the merchant, the love, and the wife say? Again, the sort of sales pitch made you fall in love with something that wasn't your partner, that wasn't wasn't really your connection. You're committed to something that really makes you feel like crap. And it's your master, and that's another way to look at the card, the Grand Lord too, is that it has become your master, and that it's sort of really killing you. So again, I think by and large, you get a sense of like the house wasn't the right thing. They were pressured to do it. In essence, it's like the same way I would read the 9 card. I just have more combinations to work with to prove my thesis. And that's something that, again, that I learned from Camellia Elias and other sort of cardomancy readers, is you identify the thesis of the reading with a combination of early cards. In the 9 card, it's these two. In the Council of 13 with Sibilla, it's these three. If it were a tarot, I'd probably start with just the first, because tarot, I feel like I often have enough in that card to tell me, but the first combination always matters. So that's one spread that I really, really like. And for answering a question, I generally don't feel like I need anything larger than that, because it does its job so well, so often. And the thing that I like about both of these methods is that one of the things that we all struggle with as readers, no matter what system we're using, is how confident we are in the answer we're giving. And in the method of the 9 card and this Council of 13, and in fact, one of the reasons why I like the Council of 13 is because, the idea of council, it's letting you check yourself. You come up with a thesis, and then you do your research and you prove that thesis, just like you do in school. So that my thesis was they really love a house that's bad for them. The rest of the cards told me how that story was true. Now, a skeptic could argue that I'm just manipulating the meanings of the cards to support my initial thesis, and they'd be right. Of course that's what I'm doing. But there have been times where the cards tell me that my initial thesis was wrong, and I have to go back and reassess. I feel more confident if I can manipulate the meaning. Like, in no case in any of these cards did I go so far from the meaning of it that it was unrecognizable. You know what I mean? I didn't let the wife card suddenly mean, I don't know, sex, say. You know what I mean? It was partnership. It became a thing you're partnered to. You made a commitment to the house. The house is the partner. So I let the cards tell me, and that's, and either you believe or you don't. But by and large, these two spreads are my favorite, because they make me feel confident that by the time I've interpreted all of the cards in the spread, I have either proven my thesis and I can feel confident in it, or I've disproven my thesis and I know I need to go back to the drawing board and start again. And that's, again, it's all about context, which I love. And this spread is so versatile, you can do it with anything. I really, I think you could do it with Lenormand. Do I have a Lenormand deck out? I do. Again, everyone knows that I am not. I feel like Sibilla actually has helped me sort of break through with Lenormand a little bit. But let's just do, like, just so you can sort of see that this spread is pretty versatile. So this is the Minute Lenormand by, oh, I can't remember the artist's name. I'll try to remember to put it down below. You're not going to see the whole thing, but, and really, because this is a Sibilla video, I shouldn't even be talking about this, but I just, I want to demonstrate that it has a similarity. And again, with Lenormand, I probably wouldn't use this single card to tell me what the central message was. I'd probably look at the central three to explore. But, what I know is this person's really good about where they're headed. For example, this combination of love and sun, they're feeling great about where they're going. I have the star card, so now the stars card. So now I would sort of look at the combo. The rider card sort of gives me a good connection to the stars as an indication. Excuse me. Feeling good about where they're going, because the writer is going somewhere and he's going home, or going to a place that feels like home that he really loves, right? So awesome. Now I let the rest of the reading kind of support that. Again, I have a movement card with the stork, and then I have the middle card and the key. So they're moving in a direction they love, and that's going to be really successful for them. Great. The bottom card, which you can't see all of, is the dog. The top card, which you can't see, is the letter. So this is probably a place that has called to them. It's a place that has communicated they're they love how faithful they are to it, and it's probably been calling to them, especially with the combination of the writer and the letter. They've probably been called to this place, potentially home, but they feel really good about going back. It's a place that they probably have a long connection to, and that, again, they feel really good and comfortable with. The lilies, the heart, and the moon. And the moon is a card that I always find difficult in a lot of readings because it's about reputation to me. That's what I learned anyway. But the reputation of this place is nice. Again, they're not upset about having to go back, and it's probably someone where older relatives live in particular. Maybe, you know what I mean, or someone who's known for being really wise and really great. So it could be a mentor they're going to visit. And then we've got the final cross, which is the garden, the heart, and the mountain. You know what I mean? They're probably leaving behind something that was making them feel stuck to go to a place where they're going to feel like they have a community. And in fact, I look to the cue of the writer moving away from the mountain. So I get a really nice sense of that. So again, even if I look at this combo, the only negative card at all in this spread is the mountain, and the sun and the moon are underneath it. And so again, we get a sense of sort of moving away from that blockage. So for someone who really doesn't read Lenormand all that well, I think the spread actually helps me really a lot. I may even cut this section out because it has nothing to do with anything, but I love that spread. And I wish it were just, even with a small deck like these two, it's not always easy to show all of it. But it would, if anyone asks me for a reading and I have the space, I just adore the Council of 13. It really is my favorite spread. So let me show you again, like tarot, I think you can make up spreads for this stuff. And why shouldn't I say that? Because I've already sort of thrown tradition to the wind. So one of the spreads that I was doing a lot in the last month or two is a 6-month forecast, which was essentially 3 sets of cards for each month. So it would be January, February, March, April, May, June, right? So each set of 3 represented a major activity or a major event, a major happening in that life, in that stretch of time, approximately. And it's, the people I've read for who've come back and said this was helpful, this was useful, have liked it, and it was just something that because I don't do a lot of timing readings. But what I found in doing it is that the last 3 months frequently are about a different story, or like it's a different act of the play. And they're often, by the time I get to like the sixth month, I have a really hard time reading. And I think it's too long, to be honest, for the kinds of things that these cards want to talk about. Especially because the way that I read is so much about choice, that when I do a predictive reading, what I'm not saying is this is going to happen. It's frequently like, this looks like it could happen, and here's the ways you want to avoid that. Especially with Sibilla seems to be really good at sort of banging the drum and warning us about stuff, right? At least in my experience. So what I'm doing now and what I'm experimenting with now is the same number of cards, but focusing on 3 months. And so rather than 3 cards for each month, I choose 6 cards for each month. But what I do is I kind of look at cause and effect over that time. So this happens, which makes this happen in the month, you know what I mean, or creates this thing. And then expand on that for each month. So let me give you kind of a sample. So in this case, I'm looking at the 3-month period kind of as a 3-act play. Because stories are about choices and consequences, right? So we do something or say something or ask something or whatever, and it causes this thing to happen. And then or you could say it in a less theatrical way, every action has an equal opposite reaction, right? So, what I do now is I look at, for example, each column is a combo. So I look at, this is the action and this is the reaction. What I have found by and large as I do this, because it creates a narrative, and again, I like to answer one question or deal with one thing in a reading. I let the first month tell me something that's important, and then the rest of the months or the rest of the set sort of explore the evolution of that over the time period. You could do, but it's rare for me, where each month would have its separate thing. I think what it does for the most part for me is it alerts me to something I need to be on the lookout for, and it explores the cause and effect over time. But you could read everything as really isolated, and sometimes frankly you just feel it, and that was what I was finding with the longer 6-month spread, was that I would get to the 4th or 5th month, and the narrative would start to change, or frequently it would be about something else completely, and it would feel that way. And I would try to tie it back, but I would just get this strong feeling like this is a different issue. Unlike in Kipper, you don't necessarily have punctuation mark cards, although what I may do is steal that idea from them, because I feel like that's kind of useful. Anyway, let me sort of look at how I would read this, right? So this is the action that happens. So I've got death, gift reversed, and partner, wife, right? So something ends that was not a gift in relationship to a partner. So it looks like there's a partnership or a collaboration that actually wasn't going well that ends. And what that does, so this happens and it causes this. It's probably not a big surprise, but you don't feel good about it because you're out there sort of leading things alone, and you're probably really dwelling, if we look at the way the Lord is looking at the coffin, you know what I mean? So you're thinking a lot about this ending. This collaboration, this partnership did not go well. It was not the gift you thought it was going to be. And, excuse me, you're out there sort of alone, unsurprised, but feeling shitty about it. All right, so how does that manifest now? So this happens, and then it elaborates next month. And I use months sort of as chunks of time, but probably not literal months. Like if I say this is January, which is the month we're in right now, this is February, but it's like around February. It's in the 4-week stretch. And right now, of course, it's like January 25th or something. I don't even know what the date is because it would be on my phone, which I'm recording this with. But you get, it's not like February 1st happens and then this comes along. So, there's an income, but you're not really happy at home. You're not happy in this place where the relationship was, the partnership was. And you're sort of really sold on the idea of a connection, but it's probably not smart, but you're really trying to sell yourself to someone, to connect, yourself to someone. You may be using not a very wise sales pitch. Because we have the old lady reversed here. So there's money coming in because of this change. So, and money, again, can be kind of a metaphor for things that are coming in flowing in. So even though this partnership ended, there's still an income that's good, but you're really not happy in this new environment, right? Your home is your environment, love is reversed. So you actually kind of hate this environment, even though there's an income, and you're really trying to connect with or sell yourself to people, and that's not the wise move right now. So the focus of this month will be this happening. The focus of the next month will be like the aftermath of that. And then you come along to the month after that, and you've got lookout reversed, sorrow reversed, and longing reversed. So I would say you're like looking in the wrong direction. You end up looking in the wrong direction because the effect that this stress is having on you, and it's sort of exacerbates bad stress, and it's made you feel kind of like at sea. You know what I mean? It makes you feel like you really did miss your opportunity to get what you wanted. But because you're looking in the wrong direction, you're in fact, if we look at the directional cue, she's looking all the way back in the past, and she's like really dwelling on this, and she's really feeling like sorry for herself. This combination is really sort of like woe is me, woe is me. You know what I mean? There's actually a stability, there's actually like an opportunity for a new way to push forward in your environment, but you're not looking at that. So there's something new in your environment that can give you some stability, a new sense of stability, but you're missing out because you're looking back. Right. Now, I could draw another set of months, right? But this feels like a kind of complete narrative to me that's like helpful enough that like I've identified something that's going to come up. And again, you can see how this theme for me keeps coming up of like, here's a thing that's going to happen that you're not going to feel good about, and here's how you get out of that. You need to not dwell on it, focus on what's coming in and not how unhappy you are and trying to sell yourself to the wrong people. Look for the right stuff, the stability that's going to make you feel sort of comfortable and happy in your new life again. And it just, again, seems to be a theme with these cards for me, that it's like, here's this thing you should be on the lookout for. And it's interesting because almost every reading I do with Sibilla seems to be about that. And it's interesting. And it may be the language of the cards. In fact, you just compare it to the Lenormand reading I did, and it was super positive, because all positive cards come up. One of the things about Sibilla too that's interesting is that it's not like you don't have clearly negative or positive cards. I mean, you do have that, but there's less. You know what I mean? In Lenormand, things are negative, neutral, or positive. Sibilla isn't quite that. You have a little more elasticity. Like this, this negative card. And, I should say that negative cards have positive blah, 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 whatever. You know what I mean? Everyone knows that. This negative card was about something that was not a gift ending, a partnership that was not good ending. That's a good thing, but you're dwelling on how it's not good and what you lost. So, yeah, it's interesting that these readings, and I'm curious to hear if you have that experience as you go through it, or if it's really just me. Let me do one more example of this, because this video is already long anyway, and let's see if I can have a more positive outcome for our imaginary folks here. I should say too, like, no one wants a negative reading, but I also feel like, and I talked about this in my Is Sibilla Negative video, proactive pessimism or defensive pessimism can be a good thing. If we're aware of the thing we should avoid, if we're aware of the pothole before we hit it, then we don't, ding the suspension on our car. So, there's nothing bad about ringing a bell about something we should sort of correct or fix. So I think that that's really a nice thing. It's interesting that this deck seems, for me, to read so much about that, which is really interesting. I'm probably going to have a lot of similar cards here because I didn't shuffle it all that much. And again, I'll just sort of focus on these to start, right? So here's something that isn't necessarily bad. In fact, there's potentially like a sickness is not good, right? But it's reversed. And in the context of these good cards or neutral cards, I would say there's actually probably a recovery. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. My apologies. There's probably a recovery because of a community that you're really comfortable with. And what that leads you to do is joyfulness, right? Service and love reversed. So we've got love reversed. Because this is a relatively positive spread so far, I'm going to say this isn't hate necessarily. I think it makes love a little bit less, but you are feeling joyful about your station, even if your station isn't great, right? Because they're paired as, and sometimes I do this. The servant here is paired with sickness, so their station still isn't great. Like they're still beholden probably to the sickness, and they're not like out of the joy yet, but they're feeling a lot better. So this community that sort of is in their space, in their environment, in their home, is helping them recover. And though they're still sort of at the service of the sickness, they're also sort of at the service of this feeling better, and they may be feeling better against their will. So then we draw the next 6 for the next month in quotation marks. So the doctor reversed is interesting here, and we have the maid reversed, and we have the house reversed. So the whole row is reversed. The doctor reversed and the maid reversed may actually suggest coming back into their power. If I think about the way that he was in service, and now the servant is reversed, and the doctor is upside down. So the sickness may have put them in a position where they're not actually at the behest, at the mercy of their doctor anymore, right? They're not in service to the sickness. But the home reversed is interesting. So they're not, there's like, this has a sort of a weirdly negative feeling. And it ends with the misfortune card. So sickness again speaks of health, and I don't really read of health. The combination of sickness and doctor always makes you think of health, right? So this could suggest a relapse too. That, I interpreted this initially as being sort of the regaining of power, but the home reversed, is tricky because it suggests not being at home. Although what could happen, what could be interesting, is that the home represents a hospital, say, or some sort of place, some sort of building that isn't just a house where the doctor is. So they're no longer at the hospital, but they may have left too early. You know what I mean? The misfortune card at the bottom here says, something isn't great, and it's not a gift. So, and the partner card. So again, we started out good, and then I've gone negative again. So let's look at the next month. And again, context really helps. Like if I had asked a specific question, let me move these over. If this were about work, then it would be easier for me to know who the doctor was. You know what I mean? And the maid and the servant cards are always really interesting from a work perspective. If this were a relationship, it's why I struggle a little bit with general readings, because I like to have the guide of knowing whether or not this is actually like the flu, or whether it's just feeling uncomfortable at work, or at home. You know what I mean? This actually might be a family thing. So, especially if you consider the way that, we become subservient to our families. So this could mean actually, if this were a family thing, the doctor reverse, the maid reverse, the home reverse may actually consider moving out. But in moving out, you're actually sort of like you weren't quite ready. You're setting yourself up for something, not good to happen. So even though you're ready to sort of move on, you've matured, and you want to get out, getting out now may not be the right time, because you still need the help. You think it's not a gift, but it is. And whenever there's a choice like this involved, the cards after it always seem to be more difficult to interpret, especially as they build. But again, you can see, like, once I decided this was about family, this column became easier to read because I knew what I was talking about here. So I really, really do not like doing general readings. And again, I do them because most times people want to know what they should be on the lookout for. And sometimes generalities are helpful. If I say this is a thing and then this is a thing and it's something you need to look out for, they may know exactly what that thing is. I like to feel more confident in what I'm saying. And then so we get the final row, and we've got consoling surprise reversed, we've got letter reversed, we've got young woman. So some communication they're hoping for doesn't come, or information that they were hoping would console them isn't happening, because the situation is too undeveloped. If this were a relationship, this could represent a person in the relationship who's immature, and not in a bad way because she's upright. But in this case, I sort of think, you know what I mean? Like if something kind of unfortunate happens because you left home too early, money or help from the family, that you were hoping for isn't going to be there because they're not ready to support you. And by ready, I look at the young woman card as adolescent. It's not developed enough. It's not ready. And so what that causes, is sort of, we have the female lover reversed. Again, if this were a relationship, that would mean something romantic. But because we're talking about like a family situation, I would say that this has like I would interpret this in terms of like the qualities of the lover, with thief and prison. And so you really are feeling sort of unromantic, and you feel like they're taking something, they're trapping you, and you're sort of like their inability, this thing that you're expecting that didn't come through is really trapping you, and you really have resentment toward it. And you're probably not really trapped, and they probably haven't really taken anything from you because these things are reversed, but you are feeling that way. So anyway, you get a sense of, the spreads that I'm using, and this one is still in development. It's why I haven't put up on the shop. What I would have done before doing this is sort of separate them a little bit and look at each of these as like another step in the journey. So this happens in January, some good conversation actually makes you feel better at home or in your environment. That goodness may fade a little bit because you have to get back to work now. And you kind of start to miss the feeling of being catered to and cared for and not having to do your chores at home. You can see how the different combinations sort of evolve the way I'm reading. And this has been fine. But I just I feel like 6 months. Honestly, I feel like 6 months is too long. So, that's just been why I'm experimenting with what I just showed you. But as you can see, as I did that reading, it's still in development because I'm still exploring the way the pairs work together. I'm still exploring the way that the cause and effect builds. And even the way that the reversals sort of change based on pairings. It's all so. The forecast, the forecast is still in development, as it were, in terms of the way I want to look at it. But people have liked this. So anyway, that's a fairly long ramble about spreads that I'm using with Sibilla cards. But the first two, the 9 card and the Council of 13, I think are exceptionally helpful. And this one's in development. So love to hear how you spread out the cards for Sibilla, what you're doing and whatnot. And take care.